Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the Agent Economy. Here with Chris, and this week we're going to be talking about agentic commerce. Chris, have you bought
Not
anything
yet,
directly
no.
from ChatGPT yet?
I don't think it's like fully rolled out in our markets, but I'm excited. I'm excited to get going. I think we talked about this last week about the funnel collapsing, but if they can give me really personalized recommendations at the best price, then I'm all in on Agentic.
Totally, fully delegated shopping across all different channels. So I have bought something with Rufus. I did that. Oh, it's a while back now, but I was struggling to buy the right cable for my laptop to plug into my screen. I bought the wrong one and then went back to get Rufus to tell me which was the right one to buy. And at that point, I thought, okay, there's some utility here, so I can definitely see the use case for it. And this week we're going to talk a bit about the expansion of Rufus. I wouldn't call it like an unknown AI agent, but it's certainly flying a little bit below the radar at the moment. All of the noise and talk is generally about ChatGPT and Gemini. So we're going to spend a bit of time talking about that and then bring it back to what's going on in ChatGPT and their ambitions for agentic as well. So let's dive in. Some of these numbers we've seen before, right, Chris? I don't think there's any surprise to people about the number of ChatGPT weekly users up at 900 million, and Google AI overviews. The amount of those that are being triggered now is pretty significant. The thing that maybe catches a bunch of people out is that Rufus year-on-year incremental new users at a quite staggering 300 million people. Now, I was having a conversation with someone earlier today who said, what counts as a user on Rufus? Is it someone who accidentally just clicks on the button that pops up in front of them and then is triggered into a chat, leaves and then buys something? And I think there's a little bit of truth in that, right? Which is, you know, Amazon really here is saying a lot of people are using Rufus, whether it's a full completion of a conversation with Rufus to check out. I'm not sure about that, but people are interacting with it and they're starting to put it in a lot more important places, which is not all that dissimilar to the conversation we've had about Google as well and the transition from the search bar
Yeah.
into, maybe
As
just a
someone
full
that
Gemini
hasn't
chat,
used
right?
Rufus, is it worth doing a 30,000-foot view of what it is, what you can actually do with it?
100% great shout. So, I mean, maybe going in there without explaining it. So, Rufus is the on platform AI chat agent from Amazon. So, it's helping people who are buying products on the Amazon platform. It also can help you find products off of Amazon as well. So it's not just focused on the products on Amazon, although I think there's probably a heavy index towards making sure you do find the product you're looking for on Amazon. But if you're looking for a brand that doesn't exist on Amazon, it can go and find it off Amazon for you. The kind of things you can ask it to do are, usual queries and searches around find me a present for a 5-year-old because I've got a birthday coming up this weekend, or help me find the best sports nutrition for a bike ride that I've got in a month's time. Those kind of questions, it will shoot into diagnose, give you the answer in the same way that ChatGPT would work. There are some interesting things about Rufus. So it's powered by or working on an algorithm in the background called Cosmo, the common sense algorithm, which is something Amazon's been working on for a while. But also, we know from recent news reports, they've done quite big deals with Anthropic and with ChatGPT. And I think there's some of the power of those models which are being leveraged in the background as well. One super interesting thing, Chris, the capabilities are being rolled out slowly across different locations. But one super interesting thing you can now do is you can see 12-month price history on any product on Amazon. So if you jump into Rufus, you want to know what the price of it was 30 days ago, 90 days ago, or even longer, 120, 365 days ago, you can just hit price history and it'll tell you that. And then in the US, but not yet available in the UK, is the ability to buy an item for you at a set price. You could say, for example, I don't know, there's an iPhone case. It's currently 25 quid. It's been 15 in the past. So you just say, when that product gets to £15, just buy it for me. I'll take it at that price, which that creates quite an interesting dynamic in the
Yeah, for sure.
marketplace, if you think about it, right? For sellers and,
Interesting.
and
So
for
on
buyers as
on
well.
Amazon Prime Day, you can look back and actually see if you're getting a good deal or not.
Yeah, which up until now, only people there are people out there who use tools like Helium, mostly people who work, in the industry, but also some consumers as well would track prices with those kind of price tracking tools. But now it's there for everyone. Well, for everyone that knows about it, it's there to go check and see whether your favorite brand is really on deal or whether it's, just a
Nice.
fake
Okay.
Black Friday promotion, like
Like a lot
like
of
a
them
whole
are.
bunch of
Okay,
them
nice.
are.
I'll check it out. Sounds good.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting. And then, they're rolling out more features on a fairly steady cadence. And right now, most of those things start out in the US, and then they're tending to propagate out into the different markets as well. So definitely one to watch. And I think there's been a bit about Rufus in the press. Well, a bit about Amazon in the press, being AI agents coming onto their platform and trying to buy things without humans being involved. And Amazon doesn't want that to happen because they want humans on their website because they want to be able to show them ads. They want to be able to follow what they do on the site and sell that as brand analytics to brands. So important for them to have the real users on the site. But interestingly, they have allowed people to use Rufus to find products outside of Amazon. So this shop direct cross web purchasing means that in theory you could use Amazon as your shopping agent, not to just buy things on Amazon, but to buy them across other platforms as well, which I think is probably bringing a bit of the challenge to, or maybe, let's say, a meaningful challenge to Gemini and its ambitions around Google Shopping, and also to ChatGPT and what we'll talk about in
Interesting.
a
Yeah,
couple of
yeah.
slides' time as
So
well.
they're not allowing other AI bots coming to site, but they're allowing their own to purchase off site. So there's a bit of a contradiction there. Okay, nice.
Yeah, exactly. Massive contradiction. Don't come shop ours, but we want to
I'll have
come
to,
shop
I'm going to
all
drop
of yours,
Jeff
essentially.
Jeff an email shortly and just say what's going on. What's going on, Bezos?
Well, he would say probably something around customer
Yeah,
obsession
there we go.
and making sure that everyone can
There's
get
the party
what
line.
they
I
need
like
at
it.
the right price and on a timely manner. And then there'll be something around the flywheel in there too. But I think what it means for brands is the whole game previously was about optimizing for and indexing for keywords, right? So, you've typed in iPhone case, you want it to be the product that appeared at the top of Amazon search for iPhone case, not all that dissimilar to how Google operated and Google keyword indexing, which we've talked about before. So same kind of process. And what's really interesting on Amazon is it's kind of like a dumbed down version of Google indexing, right? So all of the sort of more complicated things that you do on Google to optimize, or sorry, with your website to optimize for visibility in Google search, it's kind of the same thing, but just on a dumbed down level for your product detail page. So that's what the PDP stands for. And the most powerful place to put the keywords is in the title. And the closer you are to the front of the title, the more powerful they are for indexing. So then we had this whole situation on Amazon, which everyone will have seen and experienced, of people stuffing keywords into titles to try and get visibility. And they became almost unreadable in some instances, but it worked super well for getting the traffic. And so it's about finding the balance between those two things. But you'll know the examples I'm talking about, where it's like gift for boy, for girl, age 8, age
Yeah, yeah.
10, age 12, party, all the whole lot, party, Christmas, Halloween, all stuffed in there to try and capture all the different moments that someone might buy it. But I think we're moving away from that period. We're moving away from that optimization play because AI no longer likes those titles because it can't read them in the same way that
Yeah.
humans can't
And
either,
also
right? So I think that's a really interesting point,
yeah,
isn't
for
it, in
sure.
relation to
And it
regular AI search
the
too?
way consumers are now searching for products, it's less about keywords. So obviously now using prompts which are more contextually rich, generally much longer. I think the recent study came out that I think around 40% of prompts are 10 words or more. So as users have started to adopt these new AI technologies, the way they're searching for products and services is very, very different. So yeah, the world of keyword spamming is pretty dead. You now need to obviously have much contextually longer, richer queries that are capturing that user intent at that point of purchase. So yeah, super interesting.
Totally. And I think that's a good evolution for consumers too, right? So moving away from keyword stuffed articles or keyword stuffed product titles or descriptions actually just makes them more readable and more legible for humans too. So it's kind of doing two things at the same time. And talking to clients about what they can do to optimize for Rufus, well, actually, it's interesting. There's kind of two main ways you can do this right now. So one of them is I put on here on point one SPN, so specific product needs, but it's basically exactly what you were just saying, Chris, which is what is the longer form query that a human is asking into AI or into ChatGPT or Rufus, and answering that about your product. So, like, is this product good for XYZ? Yes, this product is good for XYZ. This product works well in this environment. This product works well in these conditions. This is how you would use this product.
Yeah.
That's the kind of content that now needs to be on the PDP, on the product detail pages, to answer the queries people are asking. And then, really interestingly, on Amazon, this is a great tip for anyone who's listening who wants to optimize for Rufus. So, if you scroll right down the PDP, Amazon put the questions people are asking Rufus actually on the page. So they're on underneath the main image, but if you go all the way further down, you'll see them about 2/3 of the way down the product detail page, way below the fold. And in there, if you ask one question, another prompt comes up for the user that says post your question, right? So if you're a brand, you can go post loads of questions on your product detail page. You can answer them yourself, but also consumers can answer the questions too. Now, presumably, if you've got a good product, it's going to be answered in the right way. But you basically build a whole rich set of Q&A on your product detail page. And what does AI search love? Loves a bit of Q&A, doesn't it? Quick and easy answers to the questions that people are asking. Bish bash bosh, you end up getting loads more visibility inside of Amazon Rufus. So that's a hot tip for anyone who's trying to optimize their product detail pages, to go and have a look at
There we go.
doing a
Very
bit of
nice. I
Q&A
like
seeding.
that a lot. What is the recommendation out of interest around, let's say you've got someone with like vast amount of PDP pages? Is there a quick and easy way to approach this in terms of like optimizing, like you mentioned, the use cases, who this is a good fit for, adding in that additional context at the product level?
Well, the way I've been trying to figure that out for brands is obviously using some AI tooling to do it. I mean, lifting existing content, almost trying to do it like a lift and shift of like, hey, here's what you're currently saying. Let's expand it semantically. I mean, that sentence makes sense to you, doesn't it? In terms of like, here's what we had before. Let's make it semantically richer so that it works better for the AI models. Then figuring out what are the specific product needs that relate to it and making sure those questions are being answered. The great thing is Amazon actually puts recommended category questions on the PDP, like they're just there shown. So actually just making sure you answer those is a great place to start. And then, pretty much just using AI to then generate versions of the content that can be checked by brands to make sure it's in line with brand guidelines. And then once you've done that, uh, like, if you've got a bit of a framework that you want to build the bullet points around, it's relatively easy to do that at scale, right? So that's the best way to do it. And then I think the third point on here is about this sort of invisibility to brands, and what I guess what I mean by that is, you're in the physical store, you had quite a visible shelf, right? You saw where the products were. And then we went to digital, and then that shelf actually sort of expanded, didn't it? It got super big because anyone could list as much product as they wanted, but really only the visible shelf was the stuff on the first page of Amazon or first page of Google. And now we've got this weird, I almost call it like an invisible shelf, because where is it? Like, it gets generated each time for every individual user in the chat, and then it goes away again. So for a brand, unless you're figuring out how to track this stuff, it's really difficult to know whether you're being recommended by Rufus or not, which is exactly the same challenge that we're trying to solve for brands in platforms like
Yeah, for
ChatGPT
sure.
and
Yeah,
Gemini
it's
as
an
well, right?
interesting one on the Amazon side. I hadn't thought about it. And whether they develop metrics which are baked out over time as users engage with the Rufus more, and whether you have that visibility metric, mentions, citations, who knows?
Well, one thing I can definitely be sure of is Amazon will find a way to monetize this. And as we've seen, and we'll talk about in a minute, with monetization comes data, doesn't it? So I think fully expect to get more information from Amazon about what prompts are being asked, how frequently they're being asked, and then how much we would like to pay to be visible against those prompts when consumers ask them. So I definitely see that evolving, but I think pretty fast in the Amazon ecosystem. And I think what's interesting is I can draw some parallels to Google, because Google already have the ad infrastructure. They've got the distribution then for Gemini, and then in theory, that ad tech just gets pumped into Gemini, right? Or like connected to, for want of a better description. I think the same thing will happen with Amazon Rufus. They've got the ad tech through the Amazon advertising console. They'll just figure out a way to connect Rufus and start displaying ads in there. Whereas ChatGPT, as we know, don't have that infrastructure and have been seemingly building it at a
Yeah, for sure.
rapid pace. So, so we'll come on to that in a moment. But maybe last thing we'll say on um, Amazon Rufus in let's say to summarize what would be good things to think about, I think Rufus is probably going to merge into this main search bar, which Chris, I know is your view on what's going to happen on Google and Gemini for sure. We already talked about how many AI overviews are being triggered and what's happening with ChatGPT. So that whole piece is definitely playing out that way. And what was true in the past about keyword density, having your titles really stuffed with keywords worked. It doesn't work anymore. It's stopping to work on Rufus. So um, brands really need to have a think about what's the right amount of keyword stuffing to be doing in their titles and what's the right amount of semantic relevance that should be in there. And I think over time, we're going to start to see the index away from just purely keywords far over towards
Yeah.
the semantic richness, which is absolutely everything that
It's
we've been talking about in
amazing how this is
ChatGPT as
playing
well.
out across all the big tech companies. And part of it's driven by consumer change. But I think another part of it, which we alluded to in the last episode, is that there's just going to be more search queries. More search queries means more auctions, means more revenue. So um, Google are obviously, they have a first mover advantage in this space. They have the infrastructure and distribution, but I think it's only going to be a matter of time before the others catch up and start to implement new capabilities or advertising functionality, which basically addresses that, because there's a lot of revenue to be made here.
Loads. And actually, it just reminded me of a really interesting conversation I had in the last week with someone that was talking about some research they'd done on both ChatGPT and on Amazon Rufus about the number of turns people take before they purchase. So, like, how many a query would be one turn, right? Or a prompt one turn, and then you need to ask a follow-on one to figure out what product it is you're going to buy. Now, the overwhelming majority of prompts on Rufus were single prompts to purchase. So the conclusion there was, and wait, I say overwhelming majority, I think the number was like 80%. So those people they had one last constraint they needed to figure out the answer to, or like query about the product, asked the question, got it answered, and then purchased. And I think that looks like being on a product detail page, thinking you've got the right product to buy, but still being unsure about one or two things, like, is it this size? Will it fit this thing? What exactly is the color? I don't know exactly what the last challenge would be, but like something like that, you get it answered quickly and then you purchase. And the alternative would have been scroll through
Yeah,
the
nice.
product detail page until you can figure out the answer yourself. And obviously that just takes time and effort. The other really interesting thing I heard was in the 20% where it's more than one turn, actually on I mean, need to think about the math of this, right? Because if most of them are one turn and then people are checking out, but that doesn't mean everyone's checking out, right? So I think what was true is 80% of them were one turn. And then the other 20%, which were multiple turns, had a higher conversion rate, right? So it could be true that you ask one question, then it's, you get the wrong answer, or it's not what you thought it was, so you don't buy it. But as soon as you start to do multiple queries or multiple rounds of querying about the product, you basically go further and further down the funnel, and you're much more likely to convert. So what we might find is different pricing on queries
Yeah.
that are later in a conversation. Right, so it might be one query that you ask, and it's the only one you ask, and like the bid on that might be X, but if someone's asked 5 questions and then that one, the bid
Yeah,
on
for
it might
sure. Yeah.
be X plus
More qualified
9.
leads, higher propensity to
And,
purchase. Yeah.
'cause you're more likely to that's the way to think about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
a more
100%.
qualified lead at that point,
Yeah,
right?
it's interesting. I know from my own usage of Amazon, I flip between product description pages or product pages frequently, and haven't actively used Rufus as much as I should. But I know now it's available. I'm going to go straight there, ask the questions I need, and I go straight down the funnel. So I'm definitely in that category of high propensity to purchase if I have functionality like this.
The other crazy thing about it is, like I would say, I'm a heavy user of the Amazon website for personal um, shopping, but also obviously all of my job in the past 15 years plus has been doing something in and around it. So I'm always on the site. I still don't use Rufus every time, and I think it's just like a muscle memory of like I just go to the search bar and search something, and like I know that I can get a better answer out of Rufus, but I just don't think to do it. So I think it's going to take a bit of time for that change to happen. But yeah, maybe we'll see the Rufus bar. Yeah, maybe we'll see the Rufus bar, which is the search bar completely transformed into Rufus in the same way that I think, making a bet that that might
Mr.
happen on
Bezos
Google
will
as
look at
well.
the numbers, and yeah, I'm sure it'll be more prominent on Amazon.com if the revenue checks out.
Totally. And that's what we were talking about last week, wasn't it? Which was if the volume of search goes up, there's more ads money to be generated, which is probably a great transition into one of our last slides and what's happening right now with ChatGPT and ads, because it seems like they're evolving things
Yeah,
pretty
it's
quickly
it's
in
it's
this
pretty
space
wild,
already.
and I think launching an ads product pre-AI era would have taken a lot of time, right? A lot of dev work. You're going through different cycles. You're testing product market fit. ChatGPT has the users. It has frontier models. It has the technology. It has the capabilities. It has the teams. So I think the pace of innovation is going to be rampant. I think I read something actually. They've baked in 6 years of worth of work developing ecom, advertising, and others into about 6 months. So what they've built now is, when they launched, was pretty limited. As we know, the CPM was high. It was just based on impressions. The barrier to entry was pretty high. They were testing it with a few select advertisers. They've very quickly gone from that to a full self-service rollout. So that speed of innovation, that speed of introducing a new platform to the market has been very, very quick. So now developing more and adding new functionality, I think in 6 months' time, it's going to look like a very different product with kind of enterprise grade functionality for those bigger brands. So yeah, I think originally a lukewarm launch, but I think they're going to very quickly catch up.
Well, and I'm loving lots of posts on LinkedIn where people are going analyzing the code base and comparing what has been built for ChatGPT versus Meta and Google, and saying things like it's basically the same as what we see in Meta, or it's basically the same as what we see in
I mean,
Google
I
or
mean, rinse
Alphabet
and
Tech,
repeat,
which
right?
is
They've built
fantastic.
like billions of dollars off the back of it, so it works. They have the user base. Why try and change it up? I think we've obviously mentioned this in a few different episodes. The space for advertising in this landscape differs very differently, however, to some of the other places. Cramming ads into a Q&A style format with Claude, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, they have to be very cautious about that, which is why they've put the ads at the bottom of the page, to not basically be intrusive with the actual response and at the detriment of the user experience. So that's going to be a game they're going to have to play and a tightrope they're going to have to walk. So I know there was a post from the CEO of Brain Labs today, actually, around the fact that he doesn't think ChatGPT ads are actually going to be successful, or at least hit the numbers they've said they're going to hit, because of that very nature, the fact that those ads don't really exist in that type of ecosystem. I'm more of an optimist on this. I think it does fit, but they just have to be very cautious about how they set those ads up.
Yeah, and I think in my view would be, if the ads are done well and they're shown in the right places, then actually they're good for consumers. Because if I'm searching for something and I see a whole bunch of organic results and I see a couple of ad placements, and those ad placements are products that I actually want to buy, alongside the organic, then great. Someone's figured out that that's the product that suits me best for the query that I put in, and they've decided to pay for it instead of trying to figure out how to be there organically. So if it's done in that way, I don't think it's intrusive. I think it can scale really hard. I think maybe the bit that people are missing is when someone is in market to go buy something and asking ChatGPT, they're expecting a shopping like experience to then come down the chat, which means product cards which are organically generated and product cards which are paid to be placed there in exactly the same way we see it on Amazon. So I don't think people are going to get annoyed by those type of ads. What people will get annoyed by will be when they're asking, I don't know, educational stroke
Mhm.
informational query, and the ads are getting inserted in there and they're not sure whether it's the real answer or whether it's some kind of advert. But I think when it's shopping and product related,
Yeah, I think,
people
yeah,
just
and
generally won't
kind
care.
of draw parallels between Google here as well, that the ads themselves stopped looking like ads and just became part of the experience. Users didn't really mind. The more engaging, like obviously product carousels and product cards. Like that's exactly what users are looking for, to your point. So I think they'll get innovative. They'll obviously test what works, what doesn't, drop the ones that are performing badly. I think this space is rife for advertising. It's the first time that you've got the consumer and the entire funnel directly in one UI. So it's going to be, I think it's going to play out well for them. The other thing is, and we can talk about obviously product ads, which they've just launched. Obviously, initially, like I mentioned, CPM, now moving to a CPC model as well, or having a CPC model. Product ads are being tested. They're currently in beta, so you can actually integrate your product feed directly in here into ChatGPT. So you'll be able to show product listings directly in the ad slot. But if you think back 3 months ago, probably 2 months ago, they were also looking at testing ads where you could actually converse with the brands themselves. So again, parallels here with Rufus, where you click on the ad unit and it takes you through to the organization and you can ask questions, right, about that particular product or service. Again, what we just mentioned, that kind of collapses the funnel again. You get the exact answers you're looking for and ultimately you're converting. So I think what a lot of people have missed and think that maybe ChatGPT is not going to be successful in this area, I think they're not taking into consideration the pace of innovation that ChatGPT are going to launch, new ad variations. The ads themselves are going to be very engaging and the user base is significant. So yeah, I'm not betting the house,
Totally.
maybe betting the garden shed in the yeah.
Half an hour. Garden shed, love that. I think you got a good garden shed, but I think, I'm with you. I think, the pace is gonna be rapid. I think we're looking
Yeah.
at it through the
Hmm.
old lens, not the new lens of how these things work. But having said all of that, I mean, the number they've got is staggering, right? I can't recall it off the top of my head, but it's an insane amount of ad revenue that they're expecting to deliver this year, and they still don't have, really a fully deployed
Yeah,
platform for people to buy ads on. So, time is against them, but,
I think
still gonna be a good
the
number.
estimate was 2.6 billion by end of year. So 100 million to 2.6 billion. Like there's a deficit there, but who knows? We shall see.
There is, and I think it'd be interesting to be part of their sales teams, I imagine. So, um, let's close it out with one last slide. I think what we put here is, ranking number 1 was, I guess, the old game. I mean, you still wanna be at the number 1 answer in ChatGPT when someone asks a query, but certainly ranking number 1 on Google is losing its, let's say, prominence or, being the main way that a store or a website would like to get traffic. And so I think, yeah, it's shifting, right? The frontier capability, um, we've put isn't the constraint anymore. I think we've covered quite a lot in this episode already about what's going on the commercial side. And I guess, Chris, maybe to you, any final words on, thinking about how to structure your content to make sure the models retrieve and cite, and most
Yeah, so I think
importantly,
I
recommend you.
mean, just in general, this isn't going anywhere. If you've got the big tech companies that are investing heavily and you see big plays by Google at the moment, getting websites ready for agents to purchase, you've obviously got what we talked around Amazon, ChatGPT, obviously launching capabilities in this space, and they have the significant user base. So there may be some rebuttal from the market, but ultimately, if your users are there, they're going to be using these technologies. So it's important that you double down. I think one of the key stats that came out in by 2030, this market alone, agentic commerce, is going to be worth anywhere between 3 and 5 trillion. I actually think that's conservative. I think it's going to be much more significant to that. But in order to prepare, it's really focused on ultimately looking at AI search, looking at the big technology in this space, the big tech players, so ChatGPT, Google's, the Amazons of this world, understanding what your visibility looks like and your presence within those particular ecosystems, and then working through what we've talked you through on previous episodes, and really making sure you're optimizing for the future of search in whatever format that looks like, and then layering ads where they make sense. And Google I/O is coming up 19th and 20th of this month. So recommendation to anyone that's listening. Hi, mum. I would basically double down on that. Make sure you spend some time, select the areas that you're interested in, but definitely look for some exciting announcements coming from Google, which is going to have significant impacts across the search landscape, and then downstream impacts. ChatGPT will follow suit, Amazon will follow suit. So, yeah, one to watch for sure.
Definitely sounds good. And I think we'll probably be on episode 8 by then, so we can do some kind of deconstruction of all of the things that we
We'll
watch
get
and hear
Demis
about. But I'm
on
sure there'll be lots of
to do a
news.
guest spot. I'll have a word with him.
Sounds good. Cool. All right. We'll close it
Cheers, guys.
there. Until next time.